The Great Hall of the Sondrix Prime could hold 10,000 beings at once. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath its crystal dome. Today, representatives from 12 different species filled its ancient seats. They had come for the annual Concord Summit, a tradition that stretched back thousands of years. The Valoran Confederacy had ruled this part of the galaxy for 6 millennia, and these summits reminded everyone of that power. Ambassador Kethril stood at the central speaking platform. His insectoid body clicked and shifted as he spoke, and the translation systems carried his words to every ear in the chamber. The Minthari representative was old by his species' standards. His shell faded to a dull gray, but his compound eyes still held sharp intelligence. "Honored members of the Confederacy," he said, "I bring news from the frontier that demands your attention. In the past 11 months, 17 colony worlds have fallen silent." A murmur passed through the crowd. 17 worlds was concerning, but not alarming. Colonies failed sometimes. Pirates struck. Natural disasters occurred. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. "These are not ordinary losses," Kethril continued. "We have intercepted fragments of communications from the final moments of these colonies. All of them describe the same thing. A single ship, massive beyond anything in our records. It arrives without warning. It leaves nothing behind but ash and glass." Now the murmur grew louder. Several delegates rose to their feet. The Valoran High Chancellor, a towering figure with silver scales and forearms, raised one hand for silence. "Ambassador Kethril," the Chancellor said, "these sound like the exaggerations of frightened colonists. One ship destroying entire worlds. This is the stuff of children's stories." "I thought so too, Chancellor, until I examined the evidence myself." Kethril activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above him, showing planets from orbit, or rather, showing what had once been planets. Each world was scarred beyond recognition. Continents had been burned black. Oceans had boiled away. Cities were nothing but smears of molten rock. The chamber fell silent. "One ship," Kethril repeated. "According to the survivors who managed to escape, always the same ship. It makes no demands. It accepts no surrender. It simply destroys everything and moves on." In the upper observation galleries, a young Valoran analyst named Sorveth watched the proceedings with growing unease. He had been assigned to monitor the summit as part of his training, but for the past 3 months, he had been conducting his own investigation into the destroyed colonies. What he had found kept him awake at night. The delegates below were arguing now. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for calm, suggesting the attacks might be the work of an unknown alien species from beyond explored space. A few even suggested it might be a natural phenomenon, some kind of cosmic event that only appeared to be an attack. Sorveth knew they were all wrong. He had cross-referenced every destroyed colony against historical records. At first, the connection seemed impossible. The colonies belonged to different species. They were scattered across thousands of light years. They had nothing in common except membership in the Confederacy. Then Sorveth had dug deeper. He had accessed military archives that most analysts never bothered to examine. Records from 60 years ago. Records that had been quietly buried and forgotten. Every single destroyed colony had one thing in common. Each one had been home to military personnel who participated in something called the pacification of Sol. Sorveth had never heard of Sol before he found those records. The name did not appear in any standard database. He had to search through encrypted files and classified archives to learn the truth. 60 years ago, long-range sensors had detected a primitive civilization in a distant star system. The species called themselves humans. They had only just begun to explore beyond their home world, sending crewed vessels to orbit their single moon. By Confederacy standards, they were infants taking their first steps, but the analysts of that era had been disturbed by what they saw. The humans developed technology at an alarming rate. In less than a century, they had gone from surface-bound creatures to spacefaring beings. Their population was massive, their planet teeming with billions, and their history was filled with violence. They made war upon each other with terrible creativity. They built weapons of unimaginable destruction and actually used them against their own kind. The Confederacy Council had debated for months. Some argued for contact, for bringing the humans into the galactic community and guiding their development, but others saw only danger. A species this aggressive, this inventive, this numerous, could become a threat to everything the Confederacy had built. In the end, fear won. The Valoran Grand Admiral Vexith had led a combined fleet to the human home system. 12 species contributed ships to the mission. They called it a pacification, as if they were simply calming a troublesome child. The bombardment lasted 3 days. The human world, a blue and green jewel called Earth, was transformed into a burning wasteland. 7 billion humans died. Their cities crumbled. Their oceans boiled. Their atmosphere turned to poison. The fleet returned home victorious. The Council classified the records. Within a generation, most citizens of the Confederacy had forgotten that humans ever existed. The pacification of Sol became a footnote in classified military files, remembered only by those who had participated. Sorveth stared at the arguing delegates below. They had no idea what was coming for them. They had buried their crime so deep that they had forgotten they committed it. But someone remembered. He pulled up his data again, examining the list of destroyed colonies. The pattern was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. The attacks were not random. They were targeted. Every colony had housed at least one veteran of the pacification fleet. Retired officers who had fired the weapons. Engineers who had maintained the ships. Commanders who had given the orders. Someone was hunting them. Someone was making them pay. But that was impossible. The pacification had been complete. No humans could have survived the bombardment. The fleet had made certain of that. They had sterilized the entire planet, reducing it to molten rock and toxic ash. Except the fleet had not stayed to watch the aftermath. They had declared victory and returned home. What if they had been wrong? What if some humans had escaped? Sorveth thought about what the humans must have experienced, watching their world die, fleeing into the cold darkness of space with nothing but the ships on their backs, hiding for decades, nursing their grief and their rage, building their strength in secret. What would such a species become? What would drive them? What would they build with 60 years of hatred to fuel them? The answer, Sorveth realized, was exactly what the intercepted communications described. A ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A weapon forged in the fires of vengeance. A nightmare made real. He needed to warn someone. He needed to make the Council understand what they faced. But even as he rose from his seat, he knew they would not listen. The delegates below were already dismissing Kethral's concerns. The Chancellor was calling for calm, assuring everyone that the Confederacy's military could handle any threat. They did not understand. They could not understand. They had spent 6,000 years as the dominant power in this region of space. They had never faced a species that had nothing left to lose. A priority communication alert flashed on Sorveth's personal display. His clearance level was too low to receive such alerts directly, but the system was overwhelmed. Messages were routing through every available channel. He opened the message and felt his blood turn to ice. A ship had entered the Minthri border system of Sketh 4. Sensors described it as roughly cylindrical, nearly 8 kilometers long. Its hull was black as void, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. It flew no flag and broadcast no identification, but its energy signature was off the charts, radiating more power than a small star. The colony governor had hailed the vessel repeatedly. There was no response. The ship simply moved through the system with terrible purpose, heading directly for the colony's primary population center. Defensive platforms were moving to intercept. System patrol ships were forming a blockade. 12 million colonists were beginning to evacuate, though they had nowhere to go. Reinforcements were at least 6 hours away. Sorveth knew with sickening certainty that reinforcements would not arrive in time. The pattern was already established. The ship would arrive. The ship would destroy. The ship would leave nothing behind. And somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, humanity was keeping count. The great hall of the Sandrix Prime continued its debates below, the delegates arguing over procedures and responses and jurisdictions. They did not know that their time was running out. They did not know that the past they had buried was rising to meet them. Sorveth closed his eyes and thought about the human world he had seen in the old records. Blue oceans, green forests, White clouds drifting across a living sky. 7 billion souls going about their lives, unaware that judgment was coming for them. Now judgment was coming for the Confederacy instead. He wondered if the delegates below would remember that ancient crime, when fire fell from their own skies. He wondered if they would understand, in those final moments, that they had brought the Supo. The archives of the Valoran Confederacy stretched beneath the capital city. For hundreds of kilometers, vast chambers carved from living rock held the accumulated knowledge of 6,000 years. Most of these records were accessible to any citizen, but some sections remained locked behind security protocols that even senior officials could not bypass. Sorveth stood before one such locked door, his credentials displayed on the security panel. He had requested emergency clearance 3 times in the past hour. Each request had been denied. Behind him, the chaos of mobilization filled the corridors. Military officers rushed past with urgent orders. Communication technicians shouted updates about the situation at Sketh 4. The Confederacy was finally waking up to the threat, but they were waking too slowly. The door slid open without warning. A tall Valoran female stood in the entrance, her scales marked with the silver patterns that indicated high rank. Sorveth recognized her immediately. Admiral Visandre, one of the youngest officers ever promoted to fleet command. "You are the analyst who has been requesting access to sealed military records," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Admiral. I believe I have discovered crucial information about the attacks on our colonies." "So your request indicated. You claim this has something to do with events from 60 years ago." Sorveth nodded. "The pacification of Sol. I need access to the complete records to confirm my analysis." Something flickered in the Admiral's eyes, recognition, and something else that might have been fear. "Come with me," she said. She led him through winding corridors into the deepest sections of the archive. The walls here were older, carved in styles that predated the current government. Eventually they reached a small chamber lined with data storage units. "I was a child when the pacification occurred," Admiral Visandre said. "My father served on the bombardment fleet. He never spoke of it directly, but I remember his nightmares. He would wake screaming about blue skies turning to fire." She activated a holographic display. Images filled the air around them. Sorveth had seen some of these in the fragments he had accessed, but now he saw the complete record. Earth appeared before them, rotating slowly. It was heartbreakingly beautiful. Oceans covered most of its surface, deep blue waters that hosted millions of species. Continents spread across the globe, painted in shades of green and brown and white. Clouds swirled in patterns that spoke of complex weather systems. It was alive in a way that few worlds ever achieved. "The humans called it home," the Admiral said quietly. 8 billion years old, the only planet in their system capable of supporting life. They had nowhere else to go. The image shifted. Fleet formations appeared in orbit around the blue world. Hundreds of warships from 12 different species, arranged in a sphere of death around the helpless planet. The Council's orders were explicit. The Admiral continued. Complete sterilization. No survivors. No possibility of recovery. The humans were to be erased from existence. Sorveth watched as the bombardment began. Weapons fire rained down from every direction. The planet's primitive orbital stations were destroyed in the first seconds. Then the real destruction started. Kinetic projectiles punched through the atmosphere like needles through cloth. Nuclear fire blossomed across the continents. Plasma weapons turned oceans to steam. Within hours, the beautiful blue world had become a sphere of fire and smoke. But the fleet did not stop. They continued the bombardment for 3 full days. They shattered the planet's crust in places, sending magma flowing across what had once been fertile land. They poisoned the atmosphere so thoroughly that nothing could breathe it. They burned away every trace of the civilization that had existed there. When they finally stopped, Earth was dead. A blackened ball of rock and ash, still glowing with heat, utterly lifeless. 7 billion humans, the Admiral said. Men, women, children, the old and the young, the sick and the healthy. "We killed them all, but we did not," Sorveth said. "Some survived." The Admiral nodded slowly. "I have suspected this for some time. The attack pattern on our colonies is too precise to be coincidence. Someone knows exactly who served in the pacification fleet." Someone has been hunting them for months. The surviving humans must have escaped before the bombardment ended. Perhaps on ships that were already in space when the attack began. They hid somewhere. They rebuilt. And now they have returned, with a vessel that can destroy entire colonies single-handed. The Admiral's voice was heavy with dread. We created this. We made them into what they are. Sorveth pulled up his analysis on the display. I have identified a pattern in the attacks. They are not random. Each destroyed colony housed specific individuals who held command positions during the pacification. The humans are not just attacking the Confederacy. They are hunting down everyone who gave orders, everyone who pulled triggers, everyone who watched and did nothing to stop it. A list of names, the Admiral said. They have a list of names, and they are crossing them off one by one. More than that, I believe they are building toward something. The attacks have been moving steadily inward, toward the core systems. Each destroyed colony brings them closer to the Sandrix Prime. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that Sorveth had been dreading. Grand Admiral Vexith, the commander of the pacification fleet. He still lives. He retired to a private estate on the third moon of our home world. I know, Sorveth said. He is almost certainly their primary target. Everything else has been preparation. Eliminating the subordinates. Destroying those who followed orders. But Vexith gave the orders. Vexith commanded the fleet. Vexith watched Earth burn and called it victory. We need to bring him to the capital. Put him under maximum protection. The humans cannot be allowed to. An alert cut through her words. Priority communication from the SciFi system. Both of them turned to the display as the message played. The images were fragmentary, captured by long-range sensors as the defending ships were overwhelmed. The human vessel moved through the Minthri defensive formation like a predator, through a herd of prey. Its weapons fired beams of light that passed through shields as if they did not exist. Ships that had protected Confederacy interests for centuries were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in seconds. The colony's orbital platforms made their stand. Hundreds of weapons fired at once, filling space with enough energy to crack a small moon. The human ship flew through it all without slowing. Its black hull did not even glow from the impacts. Then it turned its attention to the planet below. Sorveth had seen the aftermath of the previous attacks, but he had never witnessed one in progress. The human ship opened panels along its hull, revealing weapons arrays that defied understanding. Energy gathered around the vessel like a corona round a dark sun. Then it fired. The beams struck the colony's main city. Millions of beings lived there, going about their daily lives, raising families, working jobs, dreaming of futures they would never see. In an instant, they were gone. The city simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater of molten glass. The ship moved to the next population center and fired again. In less than an hour, SciFi was dead. 12 million colonists had been alive when the human vessel arrived. None remained when it departed. Admiral the Sandre stood in silence as the transmission ended. Sorveth could see her struggling to process what she had witnessed. The Confederacy had not faced a real military threat in generations. Their ships were designed for policing actions and displays of force, not genuine warfare. This is what we did to them, she finally said. This is exactly what we did to their world. They are showing us our own crime. They are doing more than that, Sorveth said. They are sending a message. Every attack, every destroyed colony, every dead citizen tells the same story. You thought you killed us. You thought you were safe. You were wrong. What can we do? Our weapons cannot touch their ship. Our shields cannot stop their fire. We threw everything SciFi had at them, and they did not even slow down. Sorveth did not have an answer. He was an analyst, not a strategist. He understood patterns and data, not battles and tactics. But he understood one thing with terrible clarity. The humans had spent 60 years preparing for this moment. They had lost everything, and they had used that loss to forge themselves into something new. Every day of those 6 decades had been dedicated to a single purpose. Every resource they could gather, every technology they could develop, every ounce of strength they could muster had gone into building the instrument of their vengeance. The Confederacy had forgotten the crime it committed. The Confederacy had grown soft and complacent in its power. The Confederacy had not prepared for anything, because it believed there was nothing to prepare for. Now the bill was coming due. "There is one hope," Sorvath said slowly. "The humans are not attacking randomly. They are targeting specific individuals. If we can identify their ultimate goal, perhaps we can negotiate. Perhaps we can offer them something that will satisfy their need for justice." "You want to negotiate with the beings who just killed 12 million people without mercy?" "I want to understand them. They are not mindless destroyers. They have a plan. They have targets. They could have attacked any world in the Confederacy, but they chose specific colonies with specific connections to their past. That suggests rationality. That's the bridge of the remembrance was silent except for the soft hum of systems that had been perfected over 6 decades. Captain Elena Vance stood at the central command platform, watching data streams flow across dozens of displays. Behind her, a crew of 200 humans worked with practiced efficiency, each one focused on their appointed task. Through the main viewport, the stars wheeled slowly as the massive vessel adjusted its course. The next target was 3 days away. Another colony world. Another collection of beings who had participated in the murder of Earth. Another debt to be paid. Elena was 42 years old, born on this very ship during the long years of hiding. She had never breathed air that was not recycled through filters. She had never felt natural sunlight on her skin. She had never walked on solid ground that was not the deck of a starship. But she remembered Earth, not from her own experience, but from the memories that had been preserved with religious devotion by the survivors. Holographic recordings of blue skies and green forests, audio files of birdsong and ocean waves, written accounts of what it felt like to stand in a field of grass and watch clouds drift overhead. Her grandmother had been 9 years old when Earth burned. She had been on a school field trip to an orbital station, one of the few civilian vessels in space when the Confederacy fleet arrived. The station's crew had watched in horror as the bombardment began. They had used the chaos to slip away, running for the outer planets while the aliens focused on the main target. That station had joined with other survivors, mining ships, research vessels, a handful of military craft that had been on patrol duty. Barely 50,000 humans escaped the genocide. 50,000 out of 7 billion. They had run for years, staying ahead of any pursuit, hiding in the dark spaces between stars where sensors could not reach. Eventually they found a system so barren and worthless that no species would ever bother to claim it. There, in orbit around a dying sun, they began the work of rebuilding. Generations passed. Children were born who had never known Earth. Those children grew up and had children of their own. The population swelled to hundreds of thousands, then millions, all living in stations and ships scattered through their hidden system. And through it all, they remembered. They taught their children about the blue world that had been their home. They preserved every scrap of culture and history they had saved. They told the story of the pacification over and over, making sure no human would ever forget what had been done to them. But they did not just remember. They prepared. Human ingenuity, freed from the constraints of planetary resources and focused by burning hatred, achieved things that should have been impossible. They reverse-engineered captured Confederacy technology. They developed new sciences that the aliens had never imagined. They built weapons that could crack worlds and shields that could withstand stars. And they built the Remembrance. The ship was 8 kilometers long, constructed from materials mined from asteroids that had once orbited Earth itself. Some said the hull contained trace amounts of the home world, fragments of rock that had been ejected into space during the bombardment, and later collected by human salvage teams. Elena did not know if this was true. It did not matter. What mattered was the purpose the ship served. "Captain," her tactical officer said, "long-range sensors are detecting a fleet formation at the edge of the target system." Elena nodded. This was expected. After 18 destroyed colonies, the Confederacy was finally responding with force. She had wondered how long it would take them to mobilize. How many ships? Approximately 300. Mixed composition. Valoran, Minthri, and Kethril vessels primarily. 300 ships. A substantial force by Confederacy standards. Elena felt nothing but cold calculation as she considered the numbers. 300 ships meant nothing against the Remembrance. 1,000 ships would mean nothing. Even 10,000 would not be enough. 60 years of preparation had given humanity weapons that the Confederacy could not understand, let alone counter. While the aliens had grown comfortable in their dominance, humans had been driven by desperation and rage to push the boundaries of possibility. "Maintain course," Elena ordered. "They will move to intercept. Let them come." Her first officer, a grizzled man named Marcus Cole, stepped closer. He had been born on the Remembrance just as Elena had, but he was old enough to have known survivors of the original Exodus. His grandfather had been a pilot who watched Earth burn from the cockpit of his fighter. "The colony below houses approximately 4 million beings," Marcus said quietly. "Civilian population, families, I know. Is this still the path we choose?" Elena turned to face him. This was an old argument between them, one they had repeated dozens of times over the years. Marcus had never questioned the mission itself, but he struggled with the methodology. "Every colony we have destroyed housed individuals who participated in the pacification," she said. "We do not attack randomly. We do not kill for pleasure. We kill because justice demands it, justice or vengeance." "Is there a difference when your entire species was nearly exterminated?" Marcus had no answer to that. None of them did. The line between justice and revenge had been debated endlessly in the councils that governed humanity's hidden civilization. In the end, they had reached a consensus that satisfied no one completely, but gave them a path forward. The guilty would pay. Those who gave orders, those who followed orders, those who enabled the genocide through their actions or their silence. Every species that contributed to the pacification fleet had blood on their hands. Every world that celebrated the victory or accepted the benefits of expansion into former human space shared in the crime. But there were limits. Humanity would not become what the Confederacy had been. They would not exterminate entire species. They would not murder billions of innocents to punish the crimes of their ancestors. Instead, they would demonstrate their power. They would show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. They would hunt down the guilty and deliver judgment. And then they would offer a choice. The Confederacy could accept human terms, submitting to a new order that would prevent such genocides from ever happening again. Or the Confederacy could resist, in which case humanity would systematically dismantle their civilization piece by piece, until nothing remained. It was not mercy, exactly, but it was not madness either. It was cold, calculated, purposeful destruction aimed at a specific goal. The approaching fleet entered weapons range. Elena watched on the tactical display as the Confederacy ships spread into attack formation. 300 vessels, each one convinced that superior numbers would carry the day. "They are hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." A holographic image appeared on the bridge. A Valoran admiral in ceremonial armor, scales gleaming with the confidence of someone who had never known true defeat. "Unknown vessel," the admiral said. "You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You have committed crimes against the Valoran Confederacy. You will answer for those crimes before a tribunal of the species you have wronged." Elena almost smiled. The arrogance was breathtaking. Even now, after witnessing the destruction of 18 colonies, the Confederacy believed they were in control. "I am Captain Elena Vance of the human vessel Remembrance," she replied. 60 years ago, your Confederacy committed genocide against my species. You killed 7 billion of us. You burned our world. You believed you had exterminated us completely." The Valoran admiral's expression shifted. Recognition and fear crept into his eyes. "You were wrong," Elena continued. "We survived. We rebuilt. And now we have returned to collect the debt you owe us. Stand aside, Admiral. Your fleet cannot stop us. Your weapons cannot harm us. Every ship you send against us will be destroyed. And every death will be added to the tally you must eventually pay. This is impossible." The pacification was complete. "No humans could have." "I am standing before you," Elena interrupted. "My crew numbers over 100 humans. In our hidden territories, millions more wait for our signal. We are real. We are here. And we are done hiding." She terminated the communication. "Tactical, weapons free. Navigation, maintain course. Communications, begin recording. I want the entire galaxy to see what happens to those who believe they could murder humanity and face no consequences." The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. The Confederacy ships fired everything they had. Plasma beams, kinetic projectiles, nuclear missiles. The Remembrance sailed through the storm of destruction without slowing. Its shields, developed in secret over decades, absorbed energy that would have vaporized any other vessel. Then the Remembrance returned fire. Human weapons technology had evolved far beyond anything the Confederacy possessed. Beams of focused dark energy punched through enemy shields as if they were made of paper. Gravity projectors crushed ships into balls of twisted metal. Antimatter torpedoes turned proud warships into expanding clouds of plasma. When the last Confederacy vessel fell silent, 300 ships had become 300 debris. The Valoran Confederacy had not mobilized a fleet of this size in over 1,000 years. 10,000 warships from 12 species gathered in the Hollow Nebula, a region of space where dense gas clouds and electromagnetic interference made sensor readings unreliable. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Grand Admiral Vexith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with ancient eyes. He was old now, his scales faded to pale gray, his movements slow with the weight of years. But his mind remained sharp, and his authority remained absolute. 60 years ago, he had commanded the fleet that exterminated humanity. He had given the orders. He had watched the blue world burn. He had returned home a hero, celebrated for saving the Confederacy from a future threat. Now that threat had returned, and Vexith intended to finish what he started. All fleet elements report ready status, his tactical officer announced. 10,247 vessels. Full weapon loadout. Shield generators at maximum capacity. Vexith nodded. This was the largest concentration of military power in Confederacy history. Every species had contributed their finest ships and their most experienced crews. If this fleet could not stop the human vessel, nothing could. But Vexith was not entirely confident. The reports from previous engagements disturbed him. The human ship had destroyed every force sent against it without suffering any apparent damage. Its weapons passed through shields as if they did not exist. Its defenses absorbed energy that should have vaporized any vessel. It moved with speed and precision that defied the laws of physics as the Confederacy understood them. How had the humans achieved such technology? They had been primitives 60 years ago, barely capable of reaching their own moon. Even accounting for rapid development, they should not have been able to match Confederacy science in such a short time, let alone surpass it so completely. The answer, Vexith suspected, lay in what drove them. The Confederacy had grown comfortable in its dominance. Its scientists pursued knowledge for its own sake, without urgency or desperation. Its military had not faced a real challenge in generations. The humans had been given a different motivation. Every day for 60 years, they had woken up remembering that their entire species had nearly been exterminated. Every technological advance had been driven by the need to ensure their survival. Every resource had been devoted to a single purpose, making certain that what happened to Earth could never happen again. Hatred was a powerful fuel. Vexith understood that now, perhaps too late. Sorveth stood in the fleet's intelligence center aboard the command carrier Vigilante. Admiral Vassandre had assigned him to coordinate sensor data from across the Armada. Hundreds of analysts worked beside him, each one monitoring a different sector of space. The nebula made their job nearly impossible. Gas clouds absorbed signals. Electromagnetic fields created phantom readings. A ship could be almost on top of them before sensors detected it clearly, which was exactly why Vexith had chosen this location. The human vessel relied on its superior technology to defeat Confederacy forces. In the nebula, that technology would be hampered. Speed and precision meant nothing when you could not see your enemy. Or so the theory went. Sorveth was not convinced. "Contact," one of his analysts called out. Bearing 773, distance approximately 40,000 kilometers. Massive energy signature. It has to be them. Sorveth rushed to the analyst station. The sensor reading was fragmented, corrupted by interference, but the scale was unmistakable. A single vessel, 8 kilometers long, radiating more power than a small star. The Remembrance had arrived. "Alert the fleet," Sorveth ordered. "All ships, prepare for engagement." The battle began with terrible fury. 10,000 Confederacy ships opened fire simultaneously. The nebula lit up with the light of 1,000 weapon systems. Plasma beams carved through the gas clouds. Missiles streaked toward the human vessel in swarms. Kinetic projectors hurled chunks of metal at velocities that approached light speed. The Remembrance sailed into the storm. Sorveth watched in horror as the human ship began to dismantle the Confederacy fleet. It moved through their formation like a blade through water, never stopping, never slowing. Every weapon that struck its hull was absorbed or deflected. Every ship that entered its weapons range was destroyed. The Confederacy commanders tried everything. They changed tactics. They concentrated fire. They attempted to ram the human vessel with sacrificial ships. Nothing worked. Within an hour, 1,000 Confederacy ships had been reduced to debris. Within 2 hours, the number had risen to 3,000. By the 4th hour of the battle, more than half the fleet had been destroyed. Vexith watched from his flagship as his forces were systematically annihilated. His tactical display showed nothing but red icons where proud warships had once stood. The Remembrance was approaching the center of his formation now, heading directly for the Eternal Dominion. All remaining ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel, he ordered. Every weapon, everything we have. The surviving ships obeyed. Over 4,000 vessels turned their weapons on a single target. The space around the Remembrance became a solid wall of destruction. The human ship did not even slow down. Sorveth was already running calculations. The pattern was clear. The Remembrance was not randomly engaging targets. It was cutting a path directly toward Grand Admiral Vexith's flagship. Everything else was secondary. Admiral Visandre, he called over the command channel. The human vessel is targeting the Eternal Dominion specifically. They want Vexith. Understood, the Admiral replied. All units, form protective screen around the Grand Admiral's flagship. We cannot allow. Her transmission cut off as her own ship was struck by human weapons fire. The Vigilant Eye shuddered as systems failed across multiple decks. Emergency lighting flickered on. Alarms wailed. Sorveth grabbed a console to steady himself. Around him, analysts were shouting damage reports and casualty figures. The command carrier was crippled but not destroyed. The humans had deliberately disabled it rather than destroying it completely. They wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Vexith watched the last of his protective screen dissolve into debris. His flagship was alone now, surrounded by the wreckage of 10,000 ships. The Remembrance loomed before him, black as the void, terrible in its power. Open a channel, he ordered. His voice was steady. Whatever else he might be, he was not a coward. The communication link established. A human face appeared on his screen. A woman with cold eyes and a calm expression. She wore a uniform that incorporated elements of military dress from the old Earth recordings. On her collar, she wore a small blue and green sphere. Earth. She wore Earth. Grand Admiral Vexith, the woman said. I am Captain Elena Vance of the Remembrance. I have been looking forward to this meeting for a very long time. You cannot be human. The pacification was complete. We made certain of that. You were thorough, Elena agreed. But you were not thorough enough. 50,000 of us escaped. We hid. We rebuilt. We waited. And now, 60 years later, we have come to collect what is owed. Vexith felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. True, genuine fear. What do you want? Reparations? Territory? Name your terms. The Confederacy will consider any reasonable. Elena's voice went cold. You killed 7 billion of my people. You burned our world. You erased our civilization. And now you offer to be reasonable. It was a different time. We feared what your species might become. The decision was not made lightly. You feared what we might become. Elena leaned forward. Look at me, Grand Admiral. Look at my ship. Look at the wreckage of your fleet. Do you see now what we have become? Do you understand what you created when you murdered our world? Vexith had no answer. Your fleet is destroyed, Elena continued. Your defensive capabilities are gone. I could sterilize every world in the Confederacy one by one, and there is nothing you could do to stop me. I could do to your species exactly what you did to mine. Complete extinction. Total annihilation. Eye for an eye, species for species. Please, Vexith said. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. Whatever you want. Whatever it takes. Just spare our civilians. Spare our children. They had no part in what happened 60 years ago. Neither did our children, Elena replied. Neither did the babies in their mother's arms when your fleet opened fire. Neither did the old and the sick and the innocent who could not escape. You killed them all without discrimination. Why should I be any different? Vexith closed his eyes. This was the end then. Everything he had built, everything the Confederacy had achieved, would be swept away by the vengeance of a species he had thought extinct. But I am not you, Elena said. Vexith opened his eyes. I am not you, she repeated. That is the difference between us, Grand Admiral. You saw a young species and destroyed them because you feared what they might become. I see your species and I know exactly what you are, and I choose not to become the monster you created. I don't understand. The Brig of the Remembrance was not designed for comfort, but it was not designed for cruelty either. Grand Admiral Vexith sat on a simple bench in a small cell, his wrists bound with restraints that hummed with energy. Through the transparent barrier, he could see human guards watching him with expressions that mixed hatred and curiosity. He was the first living Confederacy commander most of them had ever seen. Their entire lives had been spent preparing to destroy his kind. Now they stood guard over him instead of killing him, and Vexith could see how much that restraint cost them. The cell door opened. Captain Elena Vance entered alone, dismissing her guards with a gesture. She stood before the barrier, studying him with those cold, calculating eyes. I have questions, she said simply. I assumed you would. Why? Why did you do it? Vexith had been expecting this question. He had been preparing his answer since his capture. Fear, he said. Simple fear. Your species frightened us. We had barely reached our moon. We were no threat to anyone. You were no threat yet. But our projections showed what you might become. Your technological advancement was accelerating. Your population was massive. Your capacity for war was unlike anything we had seen. In 1,000 years, perhaps less, you would have matched our capabilities, and then surpassed them. So you murdered us before we could grow strong enough to defend ourselves. It was not murder. It was prevention. We were protecting our civilization from a future threat. Elena laughed. The sound held no humor. You were protecting your dominance. You did not want equals. You did not want competitors. You wanted to remain masters of this region of space forever, and you were willing to kill 7 billion innocent beings to maintain that position. Vexith could not deny it. The Council's reasoning had been dressed in noble language, but at its core, Elena was right. The Confederacy had not been afraid of human aggression. They had been afraid of human potential. There's no justification I can offer, he said. Nothing I say will bring back your dead or heal your wounds. I can only tell you that I believed, at the time, that I was doing the right thing. The right thing, Elena shook her head. 7 billion lives. Children in their beds. Families at dinner. People who had never even heard of your Confederacy. Who had no idea that intelligent life existed beyond their world. You burned them all, and you tell me you thought it was the right thing. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Silence stretched between them. Vexith waited for the killing blow, the final judgment. But Elena seemed to be considering something else entirely. I have been waiting my entire life for this moment, she said quietly. Waiting to meet the being who ordered my world destroyed. Waiting to look into his eyes and understand what kind of monster could do such a thing. And what do you see? I see an old man, tired, frightened, alone. You look exactly like the aliens in our historical records. The ones who watched our cities burn and called it victory. The ones who went home to their families and slept soundly, never haunted by what they had done. I did not sleep soundly, Vexith said. I have not slept soundly since that day. The nightmares never stopped. Good. Elena's voice was hard. You should suffer. You should spend every remaining moment of your life remembering what you did. I will. Whether you execute me or not, I will carry this burden until I die. Elena turned away from him. She paced the length of the cell, her hands clasped behind her back. We debated for decades, she said. My people argued endlessly about what justice would look like. Some wanted total annihilation. An eye for an eye, species for species. They said we should do to every Confederacy world what you did to Earth. Leave nothing behind but glass and ash. And the others? The others said that would make us no better than you. They argued that true justice was not about matching your cruelty, but about breaking the cycle, about proving that humanity could be something more than what you tried to turn us into. She faced him again. I have destroyed 18 colonies, killed millions of beings. I have shown your Confederacy exactly what we are capable of. Every species in your alliance knows now that we could exterminate them if we chose. We have proven our power beyond any doubt. Yes, you have. So now I have a choice. I can continue the destruction until there is nothing left of your civilization. I can become exactly the monster you feared when you decided to kill us. Or I can stop. I can show mercy when you showed none. I can prove that humanity is better than you ever imagined. Vexith felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he had not expected. Hope. What are you saying? The Confederacy will be dissolved. Every member species will return to their home systems. For 100 years, they will be forbidden from interstellar travel. They will remain on their worlds, reflecting on what they did and what was done to them. After that time, if they have demonstrated genuine change, we will consider allowing them to rejoin the galactic community under new terms. You would spare us? I would give you a chance to earn your survival. It is more than you gave us. Vexith bowed his head. He understood now why Elena had kept him alive. He was to be the messenger, the symbol, the living proof of human mercy. There's one condition, Elena continued. The Wastelands will remain. Every colony we destroyed will stand as a monument to what happened. Future generations will visit those dead worlds and learn what the Confederacy did to humanity, and what humanity did in return. Both crimes will be remembered. Both lessons will be taught. The Confederacy will accept these terms. They have no choice. No, they do not. Elena moved to the cell barrier and deactivated it. The energy field shimmered and vanished. You will be returned to your people. You will deliver humanity's terms, and you will spend whatever time remains to you making certain that no species ever again believes genocide is an acceptable solution to fear. Why me? Why spare the one most responsible? Because dead martyrs are forgotten. Living witnesses are not. You will walk among your people as proof of what they did and what we chose not to do. Every time they see you, they will remember. Every time they speak your name, they will be reminded. Death would have freed you from that burden. Life will not. Vexith rose slowly to his feet. He was old and tired and broken in ways that would never heal. But he understood his purpose now. I will do as you ask, he said. I will make them remember. See that you do. Elena escorted him personally to the shuttle bay. Human soldiers lined the corridors, watching in silence as the architect of their genocide walked past. None of them spoke. None of them moved to harm him. Their discipline was absolute, born of 6 decades of preparation and purpose. Before he boarded the shuttle, Vexith turned one last time. Your grandmother, he said. The one who survived. What was her name? Maria. Her name was Maria Vance. She was 9 years old when you murdered her world. I am sorry. For what it is worth, I am truly sorry. It is worth nothing, Elena said. But it is a start. The shuttle departed. Vexith watched through the viewport as the remembrance shrank behind him. The massive black vessel hung among the debris of 10,000 Confederacy ships, a monument to human determination and human restraint. On the bridge, Elena Vance stood alone. Her first officer approached carefully. It is done, then, Marcus said. We showed them what we could do, and then we chose not to do it. Yes. Do you think it was the right choice? Elena considered the question. Behind her, the holographic display showed Earth as it had once been. Blue and green and beautiful. The home they would never see again. I think it was the human choice, she said finally. We could have become monsters. We could have matched their cruelty with our own. But that would have meant losing ourselves. The last piece of Earth that remains is not in our ships or our databases. It is in our humanity, in our ability to choose something better than revenge. And if they betray us, if they rebuild their fleets and come for us again, then we will destroy them. We have proven that we can, but I hope it will not come to that. I hope they will learn from this. I hope they will become something better than what they were. Marcus nodded slowly. And us, what do we become now? Elena smiled for the first time in months. It was a small smile, tinged with sadness, but it was real. We become what we always should have been. Not weapons, Not Avengers, just humans. We find a world to call our own. We build cities and plant gardens and raise children who know something other than war. We live. The remembrance began to move, not toward another target, but toward the hidden territories where millions of humans waited for news. The war was over. The judgment was passed. The dead would be remembered, and the living would go on. Behind them, in orbit above the Sandrix Prime, a single word was being carved into the planet's largest continent. Massive letters, visible from space, written in every language of the Confederacy. Remember, the galaxy would not forget what had happened here. Not the crime that started it. Not the vengeance that followed. Not the mercy that ended it. Humanity had returned from extinction. They had proven their power beyond any doubt. And then they had done the hardest thing of all. They had chosen to be better than their pain. In the observation lounge, Elena's daughter found her mother staring at the holographic Earth. "Will we ever have a home again?" the girl asked. Elena took her hand. "Someday," she asked.